Hi. Hi. How are you guys? So yeah, just waiting on Akenna to come on and we could get into it. I wanted to put up a backdrop, but like I forget how to do everything on this live, to be honest. Hi. I forget how to do half of these things with lives because I'm not usually on the live. But I don't know how to put up the backdrop. I had a whole graphic. Hi Shanice, how are you? Okay, she's here. There we go. There we go. Hi, good night.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just like you, I was like, okay, I don't have anything, but whatever.
I had a whole thing, but I don't know how to do it. We will figure it out together at some point.
That's fine.
So good
That's fine.
night, everybody. This is Akenna. Can I thank you for agreeing to come here
You're
and chat with us
welcome.
about your book.
You're
I just
welcome.
had I loved your writing style. I think you're exceptional. You had me like racing through, up, down, all around. I absolutely love that. And I loved that you gave everyone grace while you were writing about your experience from your perspective, but you still said, but you know, XYZ. I love the fact that you were so emotionally intelligent. And this book literally created a safe space for women to feel their feelings. And I absolutely enjoyed it. So without further ado, you go ahead and talk about your process of writing this book and this whole thing, getting it started.
All right. So hi everyone. So just a little thing. So my name is actually it's spelled Akenna, but I grew up my entire life with people calling me Akina. So if I'm called Akina, or if you hear me saying Akina, it's fine because I grew up calling people family. I always joke that maybe my parents, mix up the letters and they just say Akina when it is in fact Akenna. So I don't correct any of the two. Both are acceptable, right? Because some years ago I had somebody like, oh, she's Akenna now. I'm like, could you relax? Because I grew up in school saying Akina. Like, people are just weird. But anyhow, so my name is Akina and I wrote a book. I'm an author. I wrote two books. But the one that we're going to talk tonight about is Labor of Love, which was my first book that was written way before 2021 but published in 2021. It was a process that I've always been a journaler. Ever since I was a child, I always used to write things down. And not very long ago, someone that I knew from childhood, I had given a textbook to, and they found the textbook. This is a grown woman in her 40s. She found the textbook that I had given to her child when I was like a teenager. And she showed me a paper, and in the paper, had things that I said that I would do when I finished secondary school. And she sent me a picture of it, and she was like, look at these things," and all of them, almost all of them except one, has already happened. So ever since I was a child, teenager, I always liked to write things down, and when I made the choice to turn it into a book, it was just that. I always say that I kind of wrote that book just for me first. I didn't think it was really just something to become a thing, but
But
yeah,
it is definitely a thing. And you're very honest and open in that book. How did that go across with all of the characters? Like when did you approach them before you wrote it? Now, guys, this book is bare facts, honesty, open. Like, how did you approach people to say, I'm writing about you in my book that I'm going to publish?
Well, I think in the book, remember, if I'm correct, in the book I shared that I used to be very shy growing up, right? So I was always very shy, always very quiet. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a very confident person. Not that I didn't know that that was not confidence back then. I thought that was just my nature and I was quiet. And which we'll get into tonight. When I got vitiligo, years later, I developed, I guess, a boldness where I had to become so sure in who I was to just live out my day. Because from the time I walk out the door, I in a gas station, people asking me, what happened to your skin? Some little child somewhere like, what happened to that? Mommy, what happened to our skin? So I have to develop a thick skin to not care what people think no matter what. So that kind of helped with the publishing process when it was time, because I was like, hey, these are my experiences, this is my story, I'm gonna share it. And there's a quote that says, if you wanted me to speak better about you, then you should have wrote better about you, you should have behaved better. But for because this book was published via a self-publishing company, I always wanted my first book to be done kind of like the right way. Because yes, there are, the second book was Amazon KDP, and people do that, and that's fine. But I just felt for my first project, I wanted to do things good quality. I believe in doing things of a good quality. And I reached out to a publisher by the name of Westport Press. See the kitty. Oh, I have a dog, so I get it. Yeah, I reached out to a publisher by the name of Westport Press. They are actually a division of HarperCollins, the self-publishing division. And just for guidance with the whole process. So they guided me through the legal process. They made sure that I had all the right approvals, as in the form of written consent from certain people that, had to be in the book. I didn't put any names as well, so it wasn't that, thing. But just to safeguard themselves, they wanted to make sure that we got written consent, as well as taking out certain things that were in there. I had to remove certain things as well, because people mightn't come for you now, but 10 years down the road, when the book is turned into a movie or something, I'm just saying, then all of a sudden they might want to show up. So we had to make sure that we get those things in order, just to safeguard myself.
Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna dive right in into one of the first quotes that I have. I have my notes. I have my notes. Okay,
Look at you.
so so you said the preconceived thoughts and notions I created about myself and my family dynamics pushed me into the abyss of rejection, causing me to feel shy, isolated, and afraid to use my voice. Explain, if you could go back, how that felt, and then how you overcame that to be who you are now.
You know, hearing you read that, I feel like I don't even know who that person is anymore, which is good. But then
Yeah.
it's like, wow. Growing up, I know we talked about being from Arima, right? So I was somebody said they were slandering a specific entertainer from Arima on Facebook, a friend of mine's. And
You have
jokingly in
that.
the
Don't
comments,
take that.
I said, hey, no Arima woman slander will be tolerated here. We laughed about it. But growing up, as a woman, as a girl from Arima, I remember I always felt like, such pride. I felt like pride. But I think when you grow up in, I don't like to use the word broken home, but without biological parents living in the same home, there is this kind of thing where you start to compare yourself to children who have that.
Yeah.
And you start to wonder, like, again, for the term broken home, right? All these terms and these ideologies, it just make you feel like, is this, like, am I whole? Because it's not what these other people portraying, not to leave out as well religion and faith and all of that, just make you even feel even worse as a child, growing up in certain dynamics. So I remember I always used to feel like the ideal life was both parents being in the same home, having all these stuff, having the social status and all these things. And that was what I wanted to attain. So by the age of 20, in my mid 20s, I had my own home, had a career, things like that. Because since age 16, 17, I was working. I was always very focused on those things. But life and God has a way of showing you that, hey, before you feel you reach, sometimes I need to pull you back a little bit to show you that, because we could be, there are a lot of people who portray these images on the outside of these perfect family units and this and that, and behind closed doors is something completely different. And I talk about that in the book as well, about that journey from realizing that from losing that perfection of image on the outside through getting vitiligo, and how that impacted every other part of my life of just wanting to just be authentically me.
Mhm. How do you deal with that now that you look at your daughters? I love their names, by the way. And now your daughters are going through what you went through with having a broke. Because I'm a single mom too. So
Right.
it is hard when you look at it as a mom from the mom side saying, I wanted to give my children this. This was what I wanted to have for them. And now I don't have it for them. I feel less. I feel, I feel like I didn't do good by them. How do you get over that? Oh, I guess her life cut a little bit. But yes, and hi, good night, everybody. How are you guys going? She's back. Okay.
Well, I start by first thing by changing the narrative and changing the vocabulary. Who came up with that term broken home? I mean, I don't know, probably somebody somewhere. Yes, ideally, we want that, we want that, what do you call it, nuclear family, right? We want that. That is the ideal. That should be the standard. But if it doesn't happen, what makes that home then broken?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What are the characteristics that we look at to define a whole unit? Because there could be two parents living in a home, and it could be broken. What do you say then to the child that I recently had a neighbor, young woman in her 30s, that passed away Boxing Day, left two young children and a husband. What do you say to those two young children? Is your home broken? So if death happens, the home is not broken, but if there is adultery or abuse and divorce happens, then the home is broken. So for my daughters, I start by one, changing the vocabulary, changing the narrative, trying my best to help them to see that, hey, okay, things in life happen, but it does not mean that God loves us any less, regardless of what the church might say, regardless of what people might say, regardless of what society might say. And it does not mean that you have to love yourself any less either. So
You aren't less. And no matter how anybody perceives you, it's how you perceive yourself that matters. Another part of the book that stood out for me is how aware, like her writing is very aware. It's very, very self aware. And he said, God allows persons to come into my life and act as surrogates to deposit into me in areas where they were deficit. I thought I was just so, like my goosebumps were rising. That was so beautiful. It may have been far from a specific teacher who would drop me home after school or neighbors who would take me out with them as their child and fill in those gaps to me that was missing in my relationship with my mom. And I mean, just being aware of that. And then there's another part I was crying when you said years later you saw the guy from the markets on the plane and you got to upgrade his seat and you were like, look, you got to, that was, I mean, noticing those things shows that you're sorry. A lot of people don't even notice these things. A lot of people don't even notice the fact that other people fill in the gap for you. So how do you show your children that? How do you keep noticing that in your day-to-day life? Because that's very observant to go back that far and say, hey, these people really were there for me. A lot of people, that's gratitude. And a lot of things I talk about is about expressing gratitude. So how do you hold on to your gratitude?
self-awareness, you mentioned that a little bit. A lot of people are not aware of those things. I think being self-aware is the key to just living so much more of a peaceful life. You save yourself a lot of problems, you save yourself a lot of trouble, a lot of conflict as well. When you become self-aware, you look at yourself and you say, you know maybe I am a little bit of the problem, and there are some things I need to shift here and there. Because so one, being self-aware and teaching them how to be self-aware too.
Mm-hmm.
I think as Caribbean people, as Trinidad people, we have a tough time seeing ourselves.
Very much so.
And
Yeah,
we
we do.
could look at everybody else. We could look at how this person give you a bad drive, or you could look at this, or you could look at that, but we could never look at ourselves. So self-awareness is so, so important on this journey of just motherhood as well, especially mothers to daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw a guy, he did a video today talking about how we speak to our children, and the things that we say, saying, don't do this, you're foolish child, or all these things. Our mothers might have not necessarily spoke life into us. We probably didn't see something taught to us, and at some point, yes, that is a reason not be able to give something. But at what point do we now step in and say, hey, I'm going to break this, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to get the tools. I mightn't be able to go and ask Granny how to do this, but I could get a book. I could Google. We have a wealth of information. The time I'm taking on TikTok to watch something foolish, I could look up, I could literally type in steps to be a good mom, and I could find that. Somebody has a video out there telling me how to do that. So you could become education, educate yourself on things that you want to see change in your life and change in your children's lives, because if not, then they would carry on that cycle, and then the conversation will still be happening in the family later down the road when change could be happening instead.
Yeah, and you were talking about breaking the cycle in your book as well. When you said that subconsciously you was pushing yourself down a slippery slope to accept what I knew I didn't deserve. Because deep down I was afraid I would mimic what I'd seen growing up. So it really is something. You talked about childhood trauma and how it affects you in the present when you get a little bit older. And as you mentioned, how you speak to your children. One of the books that I read, I think it was the Four Agreements. It's what agreements you make with yourself. And one of the stories was that a mom was tired and stressed out. And she came home and her daughter was singing, and she shouted at her daughter and said, "You can't sing, you have an ugly voice, stop singing." And the child never sang again because she believed that was true. But the mother was just stressed out. The mother was just couldn't, was probably overwhelmed or maxed out, couldn't take any more noise. And it shows a drastic side of how we speak to our children, even in moments of stress. Toxic, exactly, point out toxic language just literally just pours hurt and pain into our kids. And you're very, very, very right about that. Very right.
I think also contentment and not comparing yourself or your children to other people as well is so important. Other people's children. I love to share my first daughter's SEA journey because it was a reminder from God to me about how important it is to just be obedient to Him and to follow your own path. She wrote SEA during the pandemic, and during that time, the schools were closed, but then they had one, when schools did not open back, they had a batch they wanted to send back out. And I, against the advice from the school, I said, no, I'm not sending her back out there. I just feel like she's doing much better at home. Prior to COVID, she was, getting in the 70s, struggling a little bit. And I was like, okay, I've never been the kind of person saying, whatever school you pass for, you pass for. All
Mm-hmm.
school, and it was during COVID, everybody going pandemic high anyhow. So it's like, whatever, everybody homeschooled. And I was just fine with it. And I kept her home. And her teacher at the time said, well, if you want to do that when she doesn't perform well, that's you. And I remember I was, I stuck to it. People judged me. They was like, doing your own thing. And she passed for her first choice. And the day of results, they was like, oh, no, 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 yes, yes. But that was the very thing
Didn't
that
have
they
the
were
faith.
against
They
in the
didn't have the faith
beginning.
at all.
Yeah. So sometimes you, as a mother, have to believe in your children and have to stick to your beliefs, contrary to what the neighbor child doing, the child in church doing, the person down the road doing. Do what is best for you and your household, and for what you know your path is gonna be, and it will work out.
Definitely.
But it's hard. It's hard because
It's
most times nobody
hard.
wants to be the odd one out.
And you spoke in your book, and this is the touchy subject, when you found out you were pregnant the first time and what happened there and the amount of grace you extended to your mother. I don't think you said the reality was she was showing me love in the way that she knew. And how? Just how?
I don't know if we can say some of that on here because I don't know if it'll block the
Shush,
word. But
watches.
yeah, but yeah, when I got pregnant as a teenager, she was like, you can't keep this, um, and I think in her mind she was like, I want my daughter to have a good life. I don't want her to, to be a teen mom kind of thing. And that was her way of showing love because she didn't really grow up with a mother in that sense, um, but I will say now that she has grown a lot, and her relationship with my girls is an example to me that, okay, sometimes I'll be like, how come you never do that for me? Like, how come, but yeah.
I think it's a whole different perspective watching your mother, grandmother, than experiencing your mother, mother. Because even my elder daughter and my younger daughter have two different mothers. Like she's going on 16 next month, and my younger one is going on 8. I was a baby when I made the first one. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. So they have two different mommy experiences. Far less for how you see your mom generation later mothering your children too. So how is your relationship with your mom now?
It's good, but we have our moments. Because like I said, I think because, and I don't want to share too much of her story. I want to give her space to be able to do that, but I will share that, my mother grew up in an orphanage, and I shared about that in a book as well too. And I think that whole part of her life really, it didn't allow her to get the tools to be a mom. Remember, we spoke about tools just now to actually be a mother. So when I was younger, I used to like, struggle with that. But now I'm older. I think I use the right word, grace. I've adapted that strength and that grace to be able to say, I love you, and it is what it is. And yeah.
Now in this book, right? The book is sectioned like if it's labor. You know that each section could have been a book, right? Like the amount of stuff you packed in each section could have been a book. How did you come up with that labor of love? I know you say some of it in the book, but tell us how you came up with labor of love.
Well, my birthday is June 19th. It's on Labor Day in Trinidad, yeah. And I have this annual event that I coincidentally put on this t-shirt today. It wasn't planned. I was going out and I just grabbed that. But so it's an annual event called Labor of Love that happens on Labor Day. And my whole this whole process, I think it was really just divinely inspired. Now I am a person of faith. I'm also on a huge spiritual journey these days. I'm like, I don't know what's happening. But that will be a conversation for next day. I'll have to come back on. But it it was really just impacted by the fact that I felt like God was just taking me through a process of pain, but something had to be coming out of that. And the idea just came to compare those 9 months that you go through pregnancy, the first month being conceived with, that kind of thing, and how it ties into birthing a physical baby, but also birthing something spiritual, also birthing a purpose, because the book's title is Labor of Love from Pain to Purpose, and how God takes you sometimes through painful experiences to bring out something good in you. Now, that doesn't discredit the really horrible things that we can't explain, because sometimes there are things in life that happen that we can't explain, and that we might be like, okay, so I lost my child. Are you telling me that that's for a greater purpose? We don't know. I don't know. But I do know that there are some things from our birth to a particular age that you go through. And if a purpose doesn't come out of that, then clearly you missed something somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. So I know we were talking about what happened with my wig issue yesterday, and so one of the quotes in the book that I have highlighted as well. I really read this book again. If I were to be frank, we live in a world where authenticity is traded for filters and pretty lies of things we did to make others assume that our integrity is somehow built on the promise of this is who I am. Let's talk about that. That is a heavy, heavy statement right there. Expand on it a little bit for us.
It's a lot. I'm sure we all know someone. All know someone. You don't even have to be a close family member, you don't have to be a friend. We all know somebody who has some huge secret, but yet still the secret is kept a secret. For example, because maybe they are of a benefit to someone, they're of a benefit to a particular community or something like that. But we praise the image and, we ignore the blemish until the image or the whatever the person could do for you is of no longer valued. If it's no longer, you no longer need it, right? And especially on social media, obviously you see it every day here now. It's magnified in the day of social media now because people are just not comfortable being themselves. And I thank God every day now that when I first got vitiligo, so I'll just share that vitiligo is an autoimmune condition that's triggered by stress. A lot of people don't know that.
And
And when I
love
first got
stress
it, I
in
was like, yeah, I was like, okay, so I have it. You probably just see on my hands, but I have it on almost my entire body. I'm just wearing like a little powder and thing right now, but like on my entire face, everything, right? And when I first got it, I was like, okay, so my entire image on the outside is changing. How do I deal with this? But the inside of me was what was causing the outside to change. So then it was like something has to be fixed here, or else it might not be vitiligo, it might be something else. And a lot of time we're wasting time, we're wasting money, we're wasting energy doing things to impress people rather than just waking up and just giving God thanks for the day. The fact that we have a roof over our head. I wanted to type in your comments with that thing with the wig. Let them study to buy expensive wig. You keep looking for your house.
exactly right.
When you could go and buy a $3,000 wig, $3,000 is a mortgage payment or whatever. So I think people's priorities nowadays are really, really messed up. Maybe it's because of social media, I don't know. But I think we need to go back to like, go back to the drawing board as what it means to truly love yourself. I'm not saying don't dress up and look nice. I'm not saying that. That's really important. But make sure that when you're nice on the outside, that you're nice on the inside here too. That what comes out of your mouth is nice. Like that what's in your heart is good. I have a friend that uses this example. She says, when I die, she wants to, what would your obituary say? What would it say?
Yep. Yep,
And that impacted
definitely.
me so much. When you are no longer here, what will people say about you?
What is your legacy? What are you leaving? One of my pillars when I started TikTok was just to be real. Be as authentic as possible. I'm not going to polish everything up just to come on TikTok, you know what I mean? So, but a lot of people do. And the thing is we're bombarded with those perfect images, those aesthetic images. We're bombarded with the perfect skin, the perfect hair, the perfect body, the perfect everything that we now more than ever, because we didn't have access to these images before, we now more than ever have only perfection that we're looking at. Sometimes it used to be a billboard and a magazine, now it's as you scroll your phone.
There is this conversation going on about Sephora kids. I don't know if you saw it, but people talk
10
about.
year old Sephora.
Right, so I have a 9-year-old, she'll be 10 in a few months, and her big sister says, you are a complete Sephora kid, right? But where are they getting that from? It's from the images being fed to them of women putting on, and again, I'm not against makeup because I wear makeup, but where have 10-year-olds gone from playing with dolls to now, instead of wanting to get a doll, wanting to get concealer, wanting to get, like, I just my heart breaks for women who are beautiful and they don't love themselves. I have a very good friend. She just, she won the battle against breast cancer. It has women. I talk about this in my events every year. We bring different women on to share different stories. And when you hear some of the things that people have gone through in this life, it's amazing, and this is why I love storytelling so much, is why I chose to tell my story, is why I keep this event every year to hear women's stories. I think when you tell your story, you create space for empathy, and you create space just to see people in a different light. When you know people's story, you tend to love them more. You tend to forgive easier.
That you have an example in your book when you went on to your Zoom meeting and you announced your divorce, and somebody actually said to you, you made it a safe space. Now, I felt like, okay, I'm getting into this book now because it's real. It's you're saying, listen, this is not the ideal, but this is happening. That's a lot of courage. Like, this book is a ballsy book. You have a lot of courage in this book. How do you impart that kind of courageous living in your kids, your daughters as well?
I try to, but then it's also very scary because it took me a while to get to that place and it's not very forgiving. The world is not very forgiving. Um, so I try to, but then not too much. I want them to go through their own life process and have their own experiences because if I do something right, then they shouldn't have to go through the things that I went through. So I shouldn't even have to prepare them for those battles, right? But when I made it public. Well, public in my own little space. I mean, I know no huge. It's not like it's Beyonce. you know, when I shared within my circles that I was getting a divorce, it was a big deal because again, coming from a Christian background, being a quote unquote Christian leader in those little spaces, people they look up and they idolize marriage, right? So marriage is idolized in the church, it is idolized in Christian circles as the pinnacle of all successes. So you could be broke like a joke, but your marriage looking good to them, you're winning, right? And it it was something that I thought the woman would have. Well, the woman in that space, meaning the woman that were in my Bible study and that kind of thing, would have rejected because I was kind of like leading them. But they actually embraced me compared to the people that were on my level.
Hmm.
They were the ones who didn't take it so lightly. And I think a lot of that was because it was kind of like a mirror to them of the things that they're not willing to address. I had so many Christian women, older Christian women, come to me and tell me that I'm not listening, that I need to, God is going to do this and that because I'm not repairing my marriage, even though and I mean, I guess they'll have to buy the book to read all of that, but even though I went through years and years of abuse, physical abuse, um, a lot of different things, a lot of cheating, from the age 17 to in my 30s. And when I finally made a decision to leave, people who knew the truth was still against me leaving because marriage is the end goal. Marriage will fix the problems when the problems are occurring in the marriage. And I think it's sad. I feel really, really, really disappointed in the way that not just Christian circles, but just different spaces of religion and society in a whole too treats women who choose to walk away from toxic situations because you can't fix anybody, you can't change anybody. Staying is not going to change anybody, you could only change yourself. And I saw what staying and trying to change did to me on a physical and a health standpoint, right? It could have got because vitiligo is an autoimmune condition that affects your skin, but lupus is also autoimmune that affects your organs. It could have been something else, and stress is something that
Stress
it
guilt. Stress
it
guilt.
does. It does. And until you have a one-on-one encounter with a health battle, not until then is when you realize that this I need to make changes in my life. And it's really up to you, the individual. And I mean, I can only speak for women, but you, the woman, to say, hey, I need to put me first.
As we're on this topic, and it is something that is so widespread in society, not just in religion, how do you think we could go about changing that narrative? Because we see a lot of women stay in relationships because they're afraid, they're embarrassed, they're afraid people make fun of them, or they don't know what to do or how to do it, but then they end up hurt or dead. How do we address that as a group of women? How do we address that?
Um, for me, I would say it's really just knowing knowing what you want for your life. Because I always tell, just today I had a conversation with somebody that was taking me somewhere, a guy, and he was telling me about what he's going through with his ex-wife and this and that. And I said, if it's worth fighting for, then fight for it. And I told him I could put you onto a counselor. So not because I believe in love. I mean, I can't be having labor of love. I believe in love. I believe in I still think it have somebody out there for me in time. A lot of people they get divorced and they go cheating and they become bitter. Like, no, you know. But I believe also in just allowing people to decide what they want for their lives,
Okay,
because each woman's you know story would be different, and there are people who've had amazing testimonies and stories of going through adultery and this and that, and then relationships work through the right counsel, the right help, the right tools. But there are also people
like
who, again, like I said, you can't change anybody. And yes, I'm not on here to slander anybody. I'm just on here to just share my story, and my story will always be my story, and my truth will always be my truth,
you say
just as everybody else's will be.
you say in your book, if you don't know who you are, you will settle for anything and you will do anything to keep what it is you think you're worthy of, even if it's underneath the standard that you know you're worth. So that kind of encapsulates it right there. That when we don't know who we are or what we are, we end up just taking whatever we get. We just end up taking whatever we get, and that is sad. And as we've been speaking, another quote that I highlighted, for generations, there's been an insidious link between religion and abuse of women. Can we get into that just a little bit? No slander. I just want to know, what were your thoughts behind creating such a powerful sentence?
Yeah, well, my own experiences are not just mine, but the stories of others as well. Like, obviously, I can't share, certain things, but like I mentioned in the book, and what I will tell you as well, I also lead Labor of Love is the event that happens in June, but it's like a movement of women that we could meet almost every day for prayer and that kind of thing. We have our Monday night meetings where we meet, and this is women from around the world, not just here in Trinidad. Just hearing their stories and things that they've been through and things that they go through, and always trying to work twice as hard to prove yourself, to prove your truth. My my teenager, she goes to a all girls school, very feminist minded all girls school. And we were having a conversation about the fact that a mother would ask her boss to leave work early, and the boss will judge her and say, so you can get somebody else to pick up the children. But a man would ask his boss to leave work early, and the boss will say, oh my gosh, your praise, look at how so and so leaving to go and pick up the children. So we were having those conversations of the fact that women have to work twice as hard sometimes
But
to.
even in the interview stage, they ask you, do you have a support system for the children that you have? But they would never ask the daddy that question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's you have to work twice as hard, and it's a truth that many don't want to admit. And I know it's a controversial topic, and I know the whole, but at the end of the day, it is the truth. And if you hear, again, going back to what I said about stories, right? When you hear people's stories, it creates empathy and it gives them space to be able to tell their truth. And that's all we could do, is just allow people to just tell their stories, and hope that they would do the same for us too.
Yeah, giving people space and a lot of grace to be able to, a lot of emotional intelligence. So let's go on to the part about mental health. And you say, take the right choices to preserve your mental health. Distance yourself from some people if you need it. Delete the apps if you need to. Stop internalizing all the negative self talk or trauma you may have faced as a child. And also, there's no need to walk around pretending to be happy every day. So, this book is a book about just being real. It's about being yourself, feeling your feelings. How do you go about achieving this on a daily basis?
Girl, one day at a time, right? One day at a time sounds funny, but I've adapted that. I've adapted that that, especially this year, I mean, we only not even 30 days into the year, but having enough just for today, and I've been not to continuously, but I guess it just in my head to always keep bringing up, like using references as it pertains to my faith, right? There is a scripture that in the Bible that talks about how God gives you enough for today. Take no thought for tomorrow, because
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow will see about itself. God gives you enough for today. And we don't always think about that practically, but that the person who was alive yesterday and died today, do they have an opportunity to do anything tomorrow?
Nope.
But here we are worried about all the things. Oh gosh, next week I had to pay this bill. Next month I had this thing I want to do. Next month. So I'm trying, for me, preserving my mental health starts with really just taking everything one day at a time. Yes, we'll have goals, we'll have aspirations, we have the vision board, we have all those things. We have those things. Yes, you're not saying you're getting rid of it. But having that balance of not making your goals become anxiety when you don't see them coming to pass in your timeline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The
Exactly.
universe, God, your whole journey from pain to purpose, you don't know the timeline that on.
So when you say in your book you don't know when you're gonna get, but you know the exact moment.
You don't know
But you're
when.
gonna do it. It's gonna
If you're
happen.
gonna do it, it's gonna happen. So in the meantime, one of the reasons why I also decided to become a writer was a very powerful book. The first book I ever read by Ian Van Zandt, and the first book that I read that was so powerful by a woman, and was called Yesterday I Cried.
Mm-hmm. I've read
Read
that book.
it?
I love it.
And she inspired me to write my book the way that I did, so real and so raw. Because if you read her book, she has some kind of things in there
You went through
that
some
you
things.
you never knew that she would have gone through, right? And it's just so important for us to just take everything one day at a time, because you never know. That book, I read that when she wasn't really such a big deal, but when she became a big deal, people went back afterwards and they bought that book. So you never know what your yesterday will be, how yesterday will impact you tomorrow. But you can't spend too much time worrying about tomorrow, because you don't even know if you'll make it today.
Exactly, exactly. And you have one last quote that I loved. Being to you what no one else was. Be kind, loving, gentle, compassionate, choosing yourself, loving you, extending the same grace you give to others to you first. That really touched me because sometimes we have so much grace for everybody else. Sometimes we're so understanding, so accommodating, but then we're so harsh on ourselves. We want to beat ourselves up for everything.
Yeah, it's true. We could be our own worst enemy most times, you know. But I think it's really, really important for us to do a lot of positive self-talk. Remind yourself of your why. Remind yourself of your why. For a lot of us, women on here, mothers on here, your why might be your kids. For the man, your why might be something else. It might be your children, to your family, your spouse. But remind yourself of your why, and let that always be somewhere. Put it somewhere where you can see it. Put it at the back of your mind, of your why. Yeah, it's your screensaver. A tattoo if you need to. Remind yourself of your why, and that will keep you going.
Okay, is there anything else you want to say in general about your book? Let people know
Yeah,
where they can get
more
it, your
people would
other
buy
book, your
it.
buy your book, and then also talk about your retreat coming up in
Yeah.
June.
Oh gosh, somebody asked me today if they can get it. Here, I've been working on that. I had some, but they finished. And with the whole shipping thing, it could be such a pain. But I will get some more before the end of, hopefully before the end of February, and I'll post it on TikTok. So, and when I do, I'll make sure and get one to you as well. So you can get a hard copy. But people can order it online. They can order it on Amazon. They can look up westbowpress.com, and that's the publisher. They can get it on there too. It might be shipping, I think, on Westbow is free. So they can get it there. You can also get it on Kindle for much cheaper for people who have like an iPad and that kind of thing. Um, And I made a promise to myself as well too that if a woman wants to read the book and she cannot afford, please send me a message and I will get something to you. I don't ever want that to be a reason why people shouldn't read it. As it pertains to the women's retreat, this year is the first year that is going to be a full weekend. I have these events every year on Labor Day, but this year it's going to be a weekend where we're going to Tobago, and you could also find more information about that too. Just type in my name, Google it, Akenna Kublal,
Oh,
Labor of Love. Follow me on TikTok as well too. And there is a video on the Labor of Love page, and not too long created that of last year's event, so people could go in and see it. And it's not just a churchy thing where people come, we sing hallelujah. No, it's nothing like that. In fact, I've tried to move away from that, and it's more or less a time of escape, a time where people really dig deep, do the work, and try to hopefully leave differently than they would have come. It's a good time too. It's in the middle of the year, so January to June, things might have not been going the way we wanted with the goals that you set. June is a great time to reset, to figure out, to re-examine some things, to finish the year strong. And this year might be the last year that I'm having it here. Um, we don't know yet, but I really hope that somebody on here new could show up, because it's not going to be very big, very intimate. I want people to connect, and I want us to just really support each other on this journey, because I think more and more people need people. And I don't just mean women need women, people need people. People need people. A lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are going through a lot. A lot of people are lonely and struggling with loneliness, and we need each other.
we definitely do, and we are made to be a community. We are definitely made to be communal animals. That's who we are. So I'm gonna open up right now. If anybody has any questions for Akenna, you guys can ask. If you guys
Are you
want
going to
to
bring
know
them up or
anything
in the
specific.
comments?
Any comments? Read the
Okay.
comments, and we could definitely get any questions. I know a lot of people say they need to read the book. The book is available on Amazon. If you go to her profile, you can get the link directly there. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the live. This is the kind of environment I want to create. And I really think that when you start putting out what you want, you're going to attract what you want to come to you, because you put out light, you're going to get light. And she is, as you can see, full of light and love. So I hope we do more of these kinds of things.
I hope so
And you
too.
guys excited? Yeah, I hope you guys
I
excited to
definitely have some people that I want to put you on too. I'm like, okay, there's going to be a Friday night thing where we're going to have our wine and we're going to come on and listen to you on a Friday night.
That would be awesome, because we're going to create a place that is safe and that is loving and that is kind to ourselves. And it's just, I think this is what we can use TikTok for, what we can use these social media platforms for, and what we want the younger ones to see a lot of, because they see a lot of the other things. And I don't think that's very. Oh, somebody's asking you a question
Oh,
in the
Cassie.
comments.
Yes, we are. We're supposed to do it this year. We had one last year, and I've been trying to get in touch. The guy who is in charge of Trinidad and Tobago. So there is a Trinidad and Tobago Vitiligo Association. So for anybody on here who has vitiligo, go across to Facebook and you can look that up. We also have a group on there for people that have vitiligo living in Trinidad. Just type in vitiligo support Trinidad and Tobago. But there is a global vitiligo community. So we didn't even talk about that. So I spoke at the Global Vitiligo Conference in 2022. These people just invited me to share my experience as a Caribbean woman living with vitiligo, because it's a very different experience for a Caribbean woman versus somebody else. And they have a great community of people across there that would share about their experiences and different advice on treatments and that kind of thing. So
That they're
hopefully, Cassie, we
starting
would have
next year.
another, yeah. Hopefully, Cassie, we would have another meeting before the first quarter of the year is over, and I'll definitely share that once we do. I see somebody asked, what do I use on my skin for vitiligo? Nothing at the moment. I used to use some steroids that were recommended by the dermatologist. It never worked for me. So I just stopped because it was expensive and it used to burn.
Oh my gosh. Somebody is expressing pretty me paradise is saying that hers started the middle of last year and she's still learning to accept it. I never knew anything about this. I thought you were born with it. I didn't know you could just develop it out of nowhere. That's crazy.
Well, you could reach out to me and we could chat offline here, off of this, and I'll definitely be more than happy to just,
You and
to
Nissa.
share any information with you once I could.
I think we need more awareness about it because I didn't even know that you could just one day wake up and this cat one day wake up and
I think
have
somebody else.
this.
Yeah, it really does. And then you could also develop something called topical steroid withdrawal syndrome if your body like it's crazy. So I'm just waiting. My kids and I we always joke that mommy in 5 years you might be a white woman. Because do you know that Michael Jackson had vitiligo?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah. And
do.
because of all like not being able to accept it and that kind of thing is why he used to hide so much. But it's believed that he did a treatment to completely depigment, which is something that some people do. But when you do that, you can't be in the sun often and that kind of thing. So
I would want
it really,
stuff like that because he couldn't take the sun, yet your skin can't do it.
yeah, yeah.
Wow. And how is that experience for you as a woman, especially coming from the flight attendant, the all of that stuff to now, you're home. I don't know if you're home now or you're working somewhere else, but I know you left that dream job of yours.
I work for another company remotely, so I work from home. So that has been a blessing. Um, it has been a blessing, but you know, there are two sides to it. One, I think if somebody doesn't tell me about my vitiligo, I almost forget that I have it.
Right.
It really doesn't bother me. But if like somebody says something out of time, and sometimes it would in the beginning, like coming on TikTok and stuff, I'm not even gonna lie, like when people saying foolish remarks, it used to like not make me feel insecure because I think I'm amazing.
Wow. We all
but
agree.
but 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 it used to make me just annoyed. Like, why do people need to be so strange? Like,
I, I don't know who raised these people. I don't
who
know
is
who
your
raised
mother?
these
Who was
people.
your mother? If your mother was to see this today, what would she say? You know? But it's like, I just try my best, girl, not to take people on because Jesus is be trying to snatch me back every day.
By your
And I
hair.
have to remember that, we ain't trying to do that over here anymore.
Oh my gosh, yes, if I was saying like yeah, she's the most right. Winnie Harlow, yes, Winnie Harlow has that as well, and she's gorgeous. Yes, I mean, it would be hard, I guess, to see yourself differently. That body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
How was that the first time you started to see yourself as someone, well, as the new you?
It was hard. It was hard. It was hard, like, like, especially because there wasn't much education about it out there. I didn't know what to expect. So I didn't know would it stay like this, and it's not really something you could predict. So, for example, if I look back at some pictures before, I didn't really have hair
Mm.
and it disappeared, but I did not have pigment on my nose. So I started getting back and it going here now. So it transferred. It moves around. It's not something that you could really like on my hand. I have it all over. I have something what they call confetti vitiligo. So where eventually all of this will spread, or it might not. So that part is the challenging part, the part of not knowing.
Yes.
Yeah, not knowing if it will change or if it wouldn't change. If I was to start dating and this person meet me now,
Mhm.
do I lead with, hey, in 2 years I might be white, like like that whole thing. So it's just again not thinking about it tomorrow and just like, you know what, let me just focus on today. It's not something I could control. I completely have to relinquish that desire to want to control it and just see myself as me. I used to wear a lot of makeup in the beginning, not so much anymore because it could be frustrating. But if people do, I get that, and it takes time. Because there are people that I know within the vitiligo community that wear makeup still, that cover up, that even wear makeup on their hands. Everybody's acceptance journey is different. and there are a lot of treatments out now that reverse it. If people try to do that, it's fine. I am still trying to decide if I want to do it because it's extremely expensive and it does not, there's no guarantee that it would last. So you might spend all the money on these creams. I'm talking about like thousands of US upward. And within 6 months, it could reverse because you remember it's something tied to your immune system.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's really, it's a deep thing. You have to learn to, it, it takes you, it's an internal work. And you see, once that internal work is done, people could be like, oh, whatever, okay, but that internal work has to be done first.
Because it's something that internal caused it as well. Do you have any other effects, or it's just that?
It's just that some people have thyroid disorders and stuff too, but no, for me it's just that.
I think you, when you realized how serious this situation was and how serious you got, I think you changed. I think you immediately 180 up out of there and you said, nope, I
Yeah,
need to live. I have two
yeah,
babies. I need to
yeah,
live.
yeah.
How have your daughters received this book? Have they read it? And how have
No,
they
my big
received
one is asking me too. I told her not yet.
it? Okay. Because I know
She
in
probably
my
went
head, I
online and
feel
read
my
some little
daughter is judging
pieces.
me. If she reads this, I feel my daughter is judging me.
But no, not yet.
And how
Not
would
yet.
you deal with that conversation? This book is a lot. Like,
Well, I know that by then they would have also gone through things as women that they would have been like, well, if I be honest, our daughters are a lot smart. Children nowadays, girls, women nowadays, they're a lot smarter than we were when we were their age, huh?
mhm.
And like sometimes, even in just talking and stuff, like things that my girls and I conversations we have, they might say, "Mommy, I can't believe you was real. Wow, I would never do that." So sometimes I think they're smarter than I was at their age.
It was the part that I cried for, and that was the hospital. When he showed up and he just was dismissive of everything you guys went through, and I could see that in my life. And your daughter was looking at him like, dude, was this? And I am so sure she's going to be so acutely aware of these things. How has that affected her journey into teenagehood right now?
Well, thankfully, something that I've always been an advocate for has been therapy from a very early age, um, in their life, and without saying too much, I don't want to like put her out there, but that has been integral in their development, as well as me just, um, as unfair as that has been, me being that covering, me being like the,
Section.
yeah,
Blocking,
yeah.
blocking everything from them. Yeah, I went through years of the storytelling to make everything seem better. This, that kind of way to make sure that they view everyone in the way that they should view everyone until they get big and they drink. According to my grandmother, children just drink water and get big, and they know exactly what is what.
But
And
I
as you
think
said,
I think I
they
think it's
smarter
important
than
for
us.
them to just have their own experiences too, and to form their own opinions and that kind of thing. I try my best not to make them have my lived experience become theirs. But yeah.
We can only try because we can't guarantee that that's
Yeah.
exactly what is going to happen. But we will still continue trying every single day. So, guys, thank you for joining us on my first. You're my first guest on this live.
Really?
You're my first guest.
Oh, I thought this is something you have all the time.
I went live once before. You're my first guest, and I loved having you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. Guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Go follow her. Go check her book out on Amazon for those who can. She also offered for those who cannot afford it that she would be able to send it to you. And for those who want to have a hard copy, she's getting some copies at the end of February. Thank you guys so much for being here. Oh yes, a question was asked about your retreat, if it would be able to help someone who is recovering from Oh, I can't find it back, love. I know you asked it.
People of the Red Sea. I'm seeing
Yeah,
this as the question.
they
The
asked a
name of the,
question if
the name of the book is Labor of Love, A Woman's Journey from Pain to Purpose. It's on my page. You can see it right at the top of the page. And I will get some hard copies soon. So if you want to get a hard one, send me a message. So I'll have a list of the names and I'll get in touch with you as soon as I get the hard copies.
Keeper of the Red Sea re-ask your question, please. It kind of passed in the comments and I don't see it. I'm scrolling. I
Oh,
know
hold
it
on.
was
Withdrawal symptoms.
right, yeah.
Is that withdrawal symptoms from what? Not sure, but it's not a medical retreat. It's a healing retreat, I guess, if you want to call it that. So we would have things, the weekend will focus on things like faith. We would have some yoga on the beach. I don't want to disclose too much because the itinerary will be sent out to people that register, but it will really be like a healing and mental wellness kind of weekend.
I feel like
It's not
being surprised.
necessarily a medical retreat, or it's not rehab.
Right.
It's just for 3 days. So if you need some more extensive work, you might need to get in touch with a counselor. We will have a therapist there for the weekend, but she is coming. Her name is Sue Barker. She focuses on narcissistic abuse and that kind of thing. She's somebody I need to put you on, Nissy. Like if that woman come on here, she would be like, you'll be blown away. So I'm gonna connect you to her after this. But
I
yeah, so we will have a therapist there that weekend, but it's not going to be enough time to do extensive work. You might need to get somebody to go a little deeper. It would be a start. It would absolutely be a good start.
definitely. And to join a community as well, because guess what? We need community. Definitely need community. Again, thank you guys so much for being here and all of the love that has been shown. I hope to be back with you next week, Friday, with somebody else or with her again. We never know. And we could continue the discussions that we had today. You guys have been awesome, and I wish you guys a good night and be safe, whatever you guys do this weekend. And I'll see you later. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Lucy.